This is Parahan, and you are listening to The Parahan Show. What's up, everybody? It's me, your host, Parahan, and this is going to be my first official full-length podcast on YouTube. And I wanted to specifically put this on YouTube instead of Spotify or any of the streaming sites because I wanted to make it as easy as possible to listen to, and that you didn't have to sign up for anything or jump through any hoops, because I think this kind of stuff should be easy to obtain. This kind of information and knowledge should be free. You're probably wondering, who is Parahan? I stumbled upon this channel. He had some cool videos, but who is this guy? Well, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I am a paranormal investigator. I've been doing this for about 15 years. I've investigated everything from ghosts to UFOs to cryptids and other unexplained phenomenon. And I'm the little guy, really. I don't have a paranormal show. I'm not on TV. I don't do book signings and all that jazz. I'm just a small town person who loves the paranormal, who wants to bring people the truth, and who loves other investigators who are out there doing research and doing awesome things in the paranormal community. And I love to support other paranormal investigators. And I think that this sort of information needs to get out to the public. We're not told about this. We don't see a lot of this stuff in the news. So it's important for paranormal investigators like myself and others to get this information out there, to speak to the general public so they are getting the right and correct news and they are hearing about these things and allowed to decide for themselves what they think. And that's the thing, is that you are allowed your unbiased opinion here, because I accept all opinions and I want you to decide for yourself what you think is truth and what you think is reality. Now, you're not going to get a lot of the stuff that you see on these paranormal shows. You know, I am not Zach Baggins. I'm not Giorgio Tsoukalos. I am the real deal, you know. I aim to give people the truth and the reality of what the paranormal actually is. And I'm not here to try and make a quick buck and to deceive people and manipulate evidence. I want to start a conversation, really. And if I only have one person listening, I'm okay with that, because I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy the paranormal, and I enjoy being able to talk about these things. So thank you so much for listening. We're going to kick off the show. I've talked enough about me, but let's get started. So, ghost. Right? Ghosts are a big portion of the things that I have investigated over the years. And this is just sort of my knowledge, per se, coming from my point of view as a paranormal investigator and from the things that I have witnessed and seen. Now, what exactly is a ghost? And that's a good question, because I don't know if I can correctly answer that, because a ghost could be a series of different things. Some have said that these could be interdimensional beings. Some have said these could be the spirit of the deceased. Some claim these are demonic entities. Some claim these are even extraterrestrials. And there's many theories out there, and I don't want to gravitate towards one. But I can tell you from my experience that these spirits, these ghosts, tend to be some form of energy. And they not only are energy, but they're a type of energy that can draw off of other energies. And they have the ability to communicate, but only when this energy per se is present and when they have energy to draw off of. And I like to think of ghost in my terms as sort of like a thunderstorm. Okay? When you witness a thunderstorm, in order for a thunderstorm to occur, there has to be the right variables present, okay? There has to be heat, there has to be moisture, and there has to be wind shear. And those three conditions combine to create a thunderstorm. And it's the same way with ghosts. I believe that the only way that ghosts have the ability to communicate to us and to materialize is when there is energy present that allows them to do so. And I like to think of ghosts as sort of faint whispers in the dark that you most of the time wouldn't even realize they're there unless you were listening, unless you were looking hard enough, because a lot of times they don't have enough energy to make themselves known. And that's why they appear almost as a tapping, on the door, or a flickering in the lights, a faint whisper in your ear, a cold spot. They sort of appear in things where it's like, okay, that could be just something natural occurrence, but at the same time, that could be something paranormal. And I think that's why a lot of people don't realize when they say, well, I'd like to believe in ghosts, but I've never actually experienced one. But it's very possible that you have experienced a ghost. You simply didn't even realize it. Because like I said, it's whispers in the dark. It's very hard to notice unless you are paying attention. And a lot of times what paranormal researchers do is they are looking for what's not seen, what's not heard. The whole idea of an EVP is to capture voice phenomenon that we can't hear with our ears, but on a voice recorder, if we play it back at a different frequency, right, we can hear sometimes voices or sentences, and we're capturing what we don't essentially hear with our ears. And also with photographs and videos, we're trying to take photographic evidence or videographic evidence of something that we necessarily aren't seeing with our eyes. And this is why we do EVPs. This is why we take photographs. This is why we try and take pictures of ghosts, because a lot of times they're not seen, they're more so felt. But we can sometimes inadvertently catch these things on cameras, on voice recorders. And even when we didn't even notice it, we weren't even paying attention. So this is why paranormal investigators often do EVPs and take pictures and things like that, because we're really trying to catch something that no one can see, that almost isn't there unless you find a way to show that it's there. And that's the whole idea of a paranormal investigation, is to prove that these things are here with us. And it's interesting because I will not lie to you, because sometimes these things have a way of materializing in ways you can't quite explain. You do sometimes see hauntings where that you think that if these things are drawing off energy, then there must have been a lot of energy present for some of the things that I've heard or have experienced. And that's what's interesting about ghosts, is because I've seen cases, especially in Gettysburg, and we're going to talk about Gettysburg, which is, a hot spot for paranormal activity. Okay, because in Gettysburg, there have been cases, especially at the Gettysburg College, where these ghosts have the ability to manipulate an entire environment. And one such story that I heard was two professors who work there at Gettysburg College were going down the elevator one night to leave the campus. And in doing so, they got on the elevator. They pushed the first floor button, but the elevator did not go to the first floor. It actually took them to the basement of this building. And when the door opened and they looked out, there were all these Civil War soldiers performing operations on other Civil War soldiers, and they were doing amputations, and there were screams, and it was almost as if these people didn't notice them, but they were seeing a flashback of a movie, and it was very a residual type of energy, a repeat of the past, and they were terrified, and they kept pushing the call button to get back upstairs, and finally they did. And next day they returned, and there was nothing in the basement, and there was no one there. So that's what's interesting to me about some of these ghost stories, is that you have spirits that can actually manipulate an entire environment, that they could bring back a whole memory from the past, and that you would experience this whole environment being changed into something that has happened in the past. And you see this often recurring with these residual type energies. It's almost as if the spirits have the ability to allow you to peer into the past. It's almost like time travel, which is really interesting to me. And you see a lot of this in places where a lot of significant history has happened, where there's been a lot of big events or bloodshed. And it's almost as if these memories get burned or etched into time, and they continuously repeat themselves or are on replay. And somehow these spirits have the ability not only to materialize, but to bring you to another point in time or a memory to you. But, you know, you have to understand that ghosts are nothing like you see in the movies. Okay, a lot of people watch The Conjuring and Paranormal Activity, but it's not like that. You know, that is sort of, if you've been following ghost hunting, if you've been following the paranormal world for a long time, originally ghost hunters started off as parapsychologists who were just more scientists trying to take a bunch of readings in a place considered to be haunted. And going back to the first ghost hunters, the parapsychologists, they were doing a lot of scientific experiments. And then over the years, it kind of morphed into these more non-scientific investigations. And then you've seen the rise of these paranormal shows like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, where they're doing things that aren't really scientific experiments. They're more so trying to play the crowd and get your attention. And you've seen Hollywood get involved, and people began to want more than just your common, hey, this lady's spirit returned from the dead and appears in the yard every night, or, you know, the friendly specter. They wanted the evil, the scary, the terrifying. And I think when, you know, these in the 70s and 80s, when you had all these horror movies come out, and then the rise of the paranormal reality show really brought about this surgence of people wanting terrifying and scary. So you've seen this change. And even at the beginning of the Ghost Hunter show, right, it started out, I remember Ghost Hunters, when it first started out, it was really just them hunting, residual type spirits. But then as the show progressed and as Ghost Adventures came out and it became more about, we want scary, we want terrifying, we want more demonic entities, that's what it became all about. And now all the paranormal shows you see on TV are all about demonic, dark entities, right? You don't have these friendly sort of specters that are just simply trying to communicate. And that's all Hollywood. That's Hollywood's doing, that they've really changed essentially the way paranormal investigations are done, and they gave the stigma that ghosts are evil and demonic and trying to come after you. But from the experiences that I've had over the years, a lot of times the ghosts that, I've encountered more seem like they're trying to communicate, that they have a message that they want to get out to you, and they are trying to speak to you. And these knocking on the door, these faint whispers, these things that happen are their way of saying, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm trying to tell you something, and even with these EVPs, you hear words, and these words are simply messages that they're trying to convey to you. And I think that really essentially these ghosts are more so trying to communicate than hurt you. And I don't think it's something very dangerous. And, like I said, I've experienced a lot of paranormal things. And to us, it's scary. It's terrifying because we don't understand it. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Because, science tells us, and from what we know, is that there shouldn't exist things as ghosts. There shouldn't exist things as spirits. So it's terrifying for us because we experience something that we don't understand, we don't comprehend, and our mind tries to make sense of it. And so, of course, to us, it's terrifying, but to them, it's simply them trying to communicate, and we are freaking out and being like, okay, what's going on, And that essentially is the biggest problem, I think, with ghosts nowadays, is that people are getting the wrong idea, and they're getting even more terrified of ghosts and spirits because Hollywood is portraying the wrong message. And that's really what I've been advocating against, is that I don't necessarily think that's the case, based on what I've seen over the years and years of paranormal investigations that I've done. Is I haven't seen anything that to me says that these aren't simply entities trying to communicate with us. But what's really interesting to me, though, about ghosts is the residual type of energy, because it seems like these residual type of spirits, they're almost like trapped and trapped in time. And they kind of are forced to repeat themselves over and over again. There is a famous house here in Illinois where I live, in southern Illinois, in Carbondale, I believe, and I think it's called the Huntley House, where a gruesome murder took place. A man was had an intruder one night break into his home. He was going down the stairs. He was shot and killed and died on the stairs. And every night at the time that he was shot and killed, which I believe was around midnight, when people go there, when paranormal investigators go there, they continuously hear a gunshot, and then they hear thumping down the stairs. And it's almost like this event replays itself over and over again. And it's the same down in Louisiana at the Myrtles Plantation, St. Francisville, that there's several spirits there where you see this residual type energy. There was a man who lived there and apparently was shot and crawled up the stairs to the 11th stair and then died. And people that often stay by that staircase at the time that he died hear that moment in the past repeating itself over and over again. And that's what I find very interesting about residual type hauntings, is they're not in it. There's not really an intelligence to it. It's more so just like the past. You step into these time jumps, time loops, where it's just kind of continuously repeating itself. And that, to me, I really like the residual type energy. And I really think that's neat when it comes to paranormal investigation. But anyways, let's move on to UFOs, because UFOs have been a really hot topic nowadays. And, it's interesting because, see, I've been doing this for like 15 years. And even when I was younger, when I was a kid, I was one of the only kids, that really, in my school, that believed in things like ghosts and UFOs. And everybody else kind of thought that was a crazy idea. And it's funny because growing up, and I grew up in the 80s, 90s, right? And during this time, UFOs and ghosts weren't really widely accepted. If you said that you believed in aliens, then you were considered, crazy, that you had some sort of mental illness, and you could get committed, you get locked up for that. If you told people that you believed in aliens and Bigfoot and things like that, they would think that you suffered from some sort of mental illness. And that's how taboo it was back then. And I remember taking a test for, it was a test for a job. And one of the questions that they had asked you was, I think it was an intelligence test or something. I can't exactly remember what it was. But one of the tests they asked you was that, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in the existence of Bigfoot? Because that would fail you on this test, that you were mentally competent to handle this job and handle the requirements of this job. And so I remember that's how taboo it was when I was growing up, to believe in things like ghosts and UFOs. And it was very uncommon for people to have these beliefs. And you weren't talking about UFOs. You weren't talking about ghosts. Because if you did, you'd be ridiculed and laughed at. And I mean, there were several times people would make fun of me for believing in things like ghosts and UFOs. And I was always considered the crazy guy. And now it's become sort of mainstream. Everybody's talking about UFOs. And you're kind of left out if you don't believe in UFOs or ghosts or Bigfoot, But, that was just kind of the stigma that was surrounded, around paranormal, around the paranormal community, is that we were all crazy people. And now they're starting to come around and say, hey, maybe there's something more to this. And we've seen sort of this surgence interest in UFOs, and I really think that people have embraced an idea that has been around for centuries that we are finally coming to accept, and it's really neat to see. It's kind of a big change, especially for someone in paranormal research and ufology, and I'm sure if you're in ufology, you can understand how significant it was if you've been in paranormal research for a while, how things have changed over the years. But we have to be very careful, because now more people are interested, more eyes are on the UFO community, more eyes are on paranormal researchers to give true, credible evidence. And they're looking at us for information, for the truth. And so we have to be careful not to lead people astray. And I think now more than ever, the pressure's on us. And you've seen this whole disclosure movement. And I really like, to some extent, what's happening with that. The idea of getting people accustomed to UFOs and the things that are happening in this world, and showing them sort of this evidence that's out there. But I feel there are people that are coming into this field who are sort of have negative thoughts and ideas, and are trying to simply get fame and money and credibility. And we have to be very careful with that. And I've seen that with the disclosure movement. There's several people that are kind of leading the charge who are charging, $200 a ticket to hear them talk about UFOs. And to me, that's kind of crazy. This is information that should be shared for free, that should be communicated for free. And the fact that you're even charging $200 a ticket, and, I get it. I've been to paranormal conventions and stuff, and I understand paying to go to a paranormal convention and a speaker getting paid to come and give his time to talk about UFOs and ghost stuff and things like this. But when you're charging $200 a ticket for someone to hear you talk about UFOs, you have to rethink what has UFO research really became when people are charging $200 a ticket, Because to me, that's a big issue. That's a big problem. And you have that. And it's become now everybody wants to do a paranormal show. And all these people want to have the biggest, newest video. And they want to be first on the case. And they want to be first to break evidence and information. And we really have to examine that and say, okay, are these people looking out for the best interest of the UFO community? And are they really trying to get the truth out there? You know, because I do support other UFO researchers and other paranormal researchers, but you want them to have the people in mind and the best interest in mind, and not that they're trying to make this a, some sort of show, and that they're trying to Hollywood this. And the other problem I have with disclosure is, are we allowing other people to kind of take over UFO research and paranormal research? And is there going to be a time where we don't have the ability to get evidence and information that we need as researchers, that people aren't going to talk to us? It's going to have to go straight through someone else. And we're not going to be able to obtain information and the things that we need to do research. And that's what's scary to me, is because I feel like I'm seeing a lot of change in the community when it comes to paranormal research. And it feels like it's getting harder and harder to go out and investigate places, to go and talk to witnesses, because they only want to talk to someone who has a paranormal show, who has a lot of street cred, if you will, and they don't want to deal with other paranormal researchers. You know, if your name isn't a household name, that they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to deal with that. And it's like, how do we conduct research and do the necessary things to get, the information that we need? How do we get into that? And I think that's a very big problem that's coming about with this disclosure movement and the paranormal going so mainstream, is it's getting harder and harder for paranormal investigators to essentially do our jobs, to be able to research things, because it's getting in the hands of the wrong people who are profiting off this. And so I think we really need to change that, and we need to be careful about who we allow to lead the paranormal movement and who we trust with this stuff. I'll tell you, one of the things that happened to me that really affected how I do paranormal research was I was approached many years ago about the possibility of doing a paranormal reality show. And at first I was kind of excited about it, because this is, it's a big thing. It's a big deal. And so I was really excited about it. And I was thinking, this is a big opportunity, And so I was in talks with a network to possibly produce a pilot for a paranormal reality show. And after, engaging in talks, and then I got with a production crew to start filming this pilot. And that's when things kind of took a turn, because the production company said, you know what, we don't want you to do it your way, we want to do it our way. And we want to get viewers, and we want viewership, so you're going to have to stage some things, and you're going to have to fake evidence. And we're going to, we want to portray it a certain way. And they would start saying things, ideas that we'd suggested. That's not scary enough. That's not terrifying enough. We need to change it up. And it kind of took over and took control. And I felt like that was going against everything that, as a paranormal researcher, that I didn't think was right, and that I didn't think was good for paranormal research. And I was really upset that they had changed so many things. And to make the story short, I eventually said, you know what, I declined to do the show, and I chose not to. And I thought that I didn't want to see the paranormal community portrayed that way, and I didn't want to bring a negative attention to paranormal research. And I felt like it took away what I loved to do, and it made it something that wasn't fun anymore. And so therefore I said, you know what, if I'm going to do this from now on, I'm going to do this completely independent. And that's what I've been doing, is just solely on my own, away from the confines of production companies or control that basically limits what you can and can't do. So what I want to move on to next is I posted a video. If you get a chance, check out some of my videos. And these are some of the things that I will discuss further on the podcast to talk more about. But one of the videos that I just posted the other day was some breaking evidence in the case for Bigfoot. Okay, now Patterson-Gimlin film is probably the most significant Bigfoot evidence to date, and it's a video, about a minute 45 video that shows Bigfoot walking across a creek bed in California. And this is probably the best video footage we have of Bigfoot. Now, a lot of people have speculated that this was a hoax, that this was fake. And to give you a little background, this is called the Patterson-Gimlin film. And you had Patterson and Gimlin who set out that day to film footage of, they were making a Bigfoot show, a Bigfoot documentary. And in doing so, they accidentally stumbled upon the legendary Bigfoot, and they had heard that this was an area where Bigfoot sightings, and where there were Bigfoot sightings and where Bigfoot had been seen. So they set out with a camera that day on horseback, and the two men took about an hour worth of footage along their trip, and that's when they happened to catch that famous minute and 48 Patterson-Gimlin film that you see in pop culture, that's become famous in a lot of movies and shows. And that's been the sort of focal point of Bigfoot investigations, has been analyzing and breaking down that minute and 48 video. But I thought, we've never really looked, how hard have we looked at the other Bigfoot footage? How have we looked at this other hour of footage that was taken by Patterson and Gimlin that day? Has anybody sort of analyzed that? And that led me to actually find about 20 minutes worth of footage that they took leading up to the infamous encounter with Bigfoot. And the video that I happened to stumble upon during this 30 minutes video that I was watching, I stumbled upon something strange. And the video that you see in the other video that I posted is basically you have Gimlin filming from atop sort of a hillside, and you have Patterson going down on horseback into this ravine, and you see him sort of turn, and to the left of him, by this enormous tree stump, you see something stand up from behind this tree stump. And it looks exactly like the Bigfoot creature that is seen later on in the famous Patterson-Gimlin film. And what I thought was very interesting about this is no one had ever spoke of this before. We've never heard of this. And it's very clear that there is something there. And it doesn't seem like Patterson nor Gimlin actually acknowledged this, and they never talked of this. They never spoke of it. So that, to me, says perhaps there was another Bigfoot, or possibly multiple Bigfoot, that were present that day that they hadn't acknowledged, that they hadn't seen. And that one that they happened to catch on camera wasn't the only Bigfoot that was out there. And so, if they didn't realize that they had filmed other Bigfoot on their journey, that says to me that this wasn't a hoax, that Patterson and Gimlin weren't faking this video. that whatever they seen in that famous film was real, because they had captured other Bigfoot and didn't even realize it and didn't even speak of it. Which you think they would say, hey, we caught Bigfoot at other points in time too, because it would make the video more, it would add validity to it. But they didn't talk about that. They didn't make mention of that. So to me, that is a huge deal, that you would capture another Bigfoot on film and not even realize it, because that says to me that they did see something out there. Now, is a possibility that they were being hoaxed, that someone's playing a hoax on them? Yes, absolutely. But the fact that they see this in two different spots at two different times seems like a pretty big hoax to pull off. And that area is pretty deep woods. And if you see the original Patterson-Gimlin film, to have a suit like that and carry that through the woods and bring that kind of equipment and to plan that so perfectly and catch them off guard, that's an incredible hoax to pull off. And I don't necessarily think that someone would be capable of doing that. And I think that either Patterson and Gimlin would have had to have faked it, which I think this other video shows differently, or they really encountered a group of Bigfoot that day. And to this day, they have not denied it and said that this was a hoax, that they had intended to hoax anything. They have not gravitated towards their story. They haven't really made a lot of money off this. They've talked about it, but they haven't made a bunch of money. You know, they didn't go on to produce a Hollywood film or make, a bunch of money off a book deal. Like, this is something that they've maintained to this day and haven't really gained any fame or recognition outside of just that they're known for the Patterson-Gimlin film. But I think that this video is definitely significant in Bigfoot research, because it may prove that this was a real video. And in proving the Patterson and Gimlin film, we may in turn prove that Bigfoot may indeed exist. And what's interesting is, people always said, the biggest thing is, if Bigfoot's out there, why have we not found him yet? Why haven't there been any sort of body or significant evidence or DNA or anything like that? Well, I think the biggest thing with Bigfoot is you have to understand, if this is somehow a hybrid between a human and an ape, that this thing is sort of the missing link, okay? Imagine a 9-foot-like ape creature, right? That has the intelligence, the smarts of a human, and the ability to discern and to evade like a human, but also the strength and athleticism of a primate, and the ability to climb trees, the ability to jump very high, the strength, the power of a primate. Then you're talking about a very advanced being, and you're talking about something that has the ability to evade and hide very well. And I think what people don't realize is, when you go and look for Bigfoot, you're not searching for Bigfoot. He sees you before you ever find him. Believe that. Because when you go out hunting for Bigfoot, he knows you're there. He knows you're filming him. He knows why you are there. And that's the thing with Bigfoot, is I think he has that intelligence to know, for the survival of the species of Bigfoot, that he has to hide. He has to evade. He has to be on alert. And so my guess is that these Bigfoot-like creatures are paying attention to us, are watching at all times, and they know when you're looking for them, and they hide and they evade. And I think we've never talked about this before, because we haven't really heard stories about this. But imagine if this creature is a primate or part primate, right? Then it has the ability to climb trees. And perhaps this thing, the reason it is so elusive and it has the ability to hide, is because it's moving through the trees above us. And we don't see them because they're up in the trees, and they can hide up in the trees, and they can climb, and they can maneuver through the trees like other primates can, And you think about that they could be hiding up in the trees and we would never see them. And they could move above our heads and travel, not even having to move across the ground. And if you set cameras on the, at eye level, they could completely evade those cameras by traveling through the trees. And it's very possible they live up in trees, they sleep up in trees, they move through the trees. And that is why they are so evasive and they're so hard to find, because they're actually hiding in the trees as opposed to on the ground. And you're not just going to stumble into a nest of them. And I think the Bigfoot sightings that we have had were accidents, were them caught off guard, where someone happened to stumble upon them, which I think is very rare. And I think that also they have the ability to assess a threat. And I think that when they see a situation where there's minimal risk to them, they're not afraid to show themselves. They're not afraid to let you know that they're there, to scare you away. But in the event that they're being tracked or they're being followed, they will hide and they will keep themselves elusive. And that's something very interesting that I found with Bigfoot, is that I think that people often forget that this is not just a primate. This thing has a very high level of intelligence, has a conscience, has the ability to discern and to evade and to be elusive, and could tell when it's being tracked. It knows what's going on. It understands that it's being filmed and that we want to find it. And to protect its species, it has to hide. And I think that's something we often forget with Bigfoot. And I think that's why, to this date, we have not been able to find the elusive Bigfoot. And we've only found it in pictures and in encounters, because it does a good job of hiding itself. Well, thanks for listening. I enjoy doing this podcast, and we're going to try and do more episodes, and you'll be able to listen to them here on YouTube without having to download anything or buy anything. 100% completely free. This is Parahan. Peace out. With Bigfoot.